What's up, everybody, and welcome to Storytime, Bios3 Training Storytime. It didn't dawn on me that probably none of you, because I never told the stories, knew about what my musical abilities were. You know that I went to art school after high school, but as far as my musical abilities, let me backtrack. So I was about maybe 10 or 11 years old, about 10. And I was into skateboarding, BMX bike riding, all that stuff like that, etc. And I went to a flea market with my dad up in Providence, Rhode Island. And I saw these two guys who sold like heavy metal t-shirts, had long hair, like, mustaches and beards and stuff, like earrings. Tattoos weren't really big then. And I saw this guy hanging out at the table. He was one of the owners of the thing who sold stuff at the flea market. And he had like all these really attractive girls around him. Now at 10 years old, I knew attractive girls, that dude, he's cool. Okay, something about him makes him cool. If it's the hair, if it's whatever. So I went up. My father actually my mom actually owned a business. It was called JW Discount Linen. And they sold towels, linens, blankets, stuff like that. And it was a store that was in Warren, Rhode Island, where we lived. And on the weekends, what they would do is actually set up a JW Linen at this flea market now. So now I was there working with my dad at about 10 years old every weekend. And I walked up to this thing, and I was kind of like looking around, looking at the t-shirts and stuff. And the guy looks at me and says, "Hey, man, what's up?" And I kind of looked at him, and it was the cool guy. His name was Kenny. Kenny Emond. Never forget him. Hope he sees this. I hope somehow this runs into him. And I was kind of shy. I was like, "Hey, the shirts are cool." He was like, "So, what do you do? Do you play in a band?" Or I was like 10 years old, the short hair, Vans, sneakers. I was a total geek, right? But he was cool. You could tell I was shy. My dad came by and said, "Hey, what you doing?" I said, "I'm looking at the t-shirts." And he talked to my dad for a little bit, and everything was cool. And I kept coming around. And I'd buy like little pins and put them on my lapels, Slayer and Guns N' Roses and shit, and Metallica. And I didn't even know what Metallica was back then. But I said, that year, for my birthday, I said, "I want to be like Kenny, Dad." So I want to play bass guitar. I want to play in a band. I want to be like the next Aerosmith. And my mom and my dad, being supportive the way they were, bought me a bass guitar. Now, little did they know, Kenny or myself, that when I picked that thing up, I literally played it. I couldn't play any songs or anything, but I knew how to move my fingers. I had the dexterity, I had the control, I had all that stuff the first time picking it up. So now I was like, well, I don't know how to figure out how to play this thing. So I pack it all up and I bring it with me to the flea market the next Saturday. And I walk up to Kenny and I say, "Look, I got a bass for Christmas. I did it. I'm going to be a rock star." And Kenny opens it up. He's like, "Hey, man, it's a pretty nice bass for your first bass. Can you play it?" So I put it on my lap and I start hitting the string. He was like, "Where did you learn how to do that?" I said, I hadn't. And literally he just said, "Okay, well, here, put your finger here. Put your finger here. Put your finger here. Those are the 3 notes in this song. And here's what it sounds like." He played it on the thing, and I would go back and forth. Now, long story short, I learned how to play the bass guitar like that. With no lessons, nobody teaching me nothing. I learned how to play it. I could hear the music, make the jump to wherever it was on the frets and say, "Okay, that's a G, that's an A, that's a D." And I could hear it in the songs. So I would just play to the songs on my CD player. I would just sit to the CD player. What the fuck? Where does he learn how to do this? And I'd spend all my time in my room learning how to play these songs. So I did wind up playing bass for quite a while. So about 11 years old now. A couple kids at school were putting like a band together. So now we had like a little garage band in my buddy's basement. The drummer, Steven, and me were the same age. We had 2 kids that were younger than us. One played guitar, one played lead guitar, one was rhythm guitar, and he played the drums and I played the bass. So we had probably a 10-song set list. But it was like a bunch of kids not really doing much. We were just doing it in the basement to have fun. And then I moved to schools to Warren. Now this is 12 years old. Okay? 12 years old. I don't remember back to what you were doing when you were 12. 12 years old, I go to this new school. I meet my buddy Henry. I've talked about him. And Brian and Dave. Brian DeFusco and Dave, who had a band called Opposing Force. Now, they were the 2 members that stayed all the time in it. But the drummer and the bass player would rotate because they couldn't find people to stay in the band. They always went off and did other things. And Brian and Dave wanted to be the next Aerosmith. So he comes up to me in school, the long hair, he had a tattoo. He says, "Hey, man, I heard you play bass." I said, "Yeah." He was like a few years older than me. I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, well, we're looking for a bass player." He said, "We're practicing at Chris Longo." Now, I knew Chris Longo, the drummer, was amazing. And everybody wanted to play in his bands and stuff. And the kid was just off the chain. So here I have an opportunity to play, at least for the day, in Chris's band at his house. I'm sold. I take my bass guitar, we go over there, learn a few songs within minutes of their songs, even some of their original songs, which they weren't very hard for the bass line. Next thing you know, they're like, do you want to be in the band? Yes, I want to be in the band. So here I am, 12 years old, okay? 12. Now, we learned probably 30 songs in a few months. I mean, that's all we did. After school, we go there and play till Chris's house and jam till, I don't know, 6:30, 7:30 at night when his parents would come home and kick us out. So all of a sudden, I come to school one day and Brian says, my dad got us a gig, man. Now, mind you, these guys were 17, 18 years old. I was 12. And he said, yeah, man, we got a gig at Faces, which was a bar in Riverside, Rhode Island. So I'm like, awesome, man. You get the stage set up and the lights. We just got to be there by this time, blah, blah, blah. And then it dawns on me. I said, man, I got to go home and tell my parents. I got to ask my parents. So I go home and I ask my parents. I say, Mom, Dad, can I go to the gig that we have, Saturday night? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. Somebody's house. I said, it's at a bar in Riverside. And my parents flipped their shit. They were like, a bar? A 12-year-old kid in a bar? First of all, they're underage, but they're 18. They're old enough to fend for themselves. You're 12. You're not going to a bar. What night is it? Saturday. That's your birthday. My birthday. So my 13th birthday, turning from 12 turning to 13, I had a gig. My dad had to go with me. My mom wouldn't let me go by myself. He had to go. And that was my first gig. I played at Faces in Riverside, Rhode Island. Faces Bar. 13 years old with Opposing Force. Now I eventually went on to, after that band kind of crumbled apart, I decided that I wanted to play guitar. So I went and bought a 6-string regular electric guitar, taught myself how to play that, played in a band with that for a little while. Then drums was my next big thing. I bought a drum set. Now I'm not talking about a drum set, I'm talking about a 2 bass drum, 4 rack toms, 2 floor toms, a China Boy cymbal, 2 cymbals in the front, the hi-hat and the cowbell. That was the set. It was like Tommy Lee's set from Motley Crue. It was badass. And my uncle just happened to work with a company that worked for Pearl, the drum company that made the drum heads and the drums. So I would get sticks and drum heads and all kinds of stuff sent from them. Not only did I play in bands, but I decided to join the jazz band in school because I knew there were other things I needed to learn, and I did. But I didn't like it. So luckily the teacher let me go ahead and stay in the class, give me the credit. And like once a day he would just let me go in there and play by myself. Be like, okay, you did what you required. So I was, sophomore in high school. Not the most popular guy, not a geek, but I was a metalhead. And they said, we have an assembly coming up. It's for the whole school, 8th through 12th. Now my cousin Christopher was in 12th grade, I think, at that time. And all his friends were going to be there, and he was going to be there. So he said, we want you, Frankie, and Will, the other 2 guys that one played bass, one played guitar, to do just a song. Do a song, whatever song you want. So we talked it over, and they were like, why don't we do Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin? Moby Dick is a drum solo, and I was the drummer. I said, all right, and I'm going to do it like John Bonham did. I'm going to do it with my hands, I'm going to do the whole thing. I listened to it, I learned how to play it, but I did it my own way too. I always do things a little bit my own way. And the day came, and we played in front of the school. And it was nerve-wracking. You're in front of all these people who, my cousin who I look up to, all of his friends, all the girls. So of course you don't want to look like an idiot. And I just remember the last the last time I hit that cymbal, the whole place just jumped up. All the kids in the whole school were on their feet yelling and clapping and screaming because they all loved Led Zeppelin. And they had no idea I could do that. Even my own cousin had no idea I could play like that. So after that, it was more like I had the older kids coming up to me like, man, it was like I became more popular. I had a sense of popularity after I played that song with those guys. And that kind of continued as I got older in high school, I cut my hair off. And I started getting back into athletics and stuff like that. I get the people, hey man, remember you had the long hair, you played the drums, right? Like it's something that they always remember me for. So if you go back to Rhode Island, you go, hey, Jerry Ward, they're not going to go, oh, the big bodybuilder, the former pro wrestler. They're going to go, the dude with the long hair, he used to have the long hair, scrawny guy, pale, built like a stick. And you're going to go, that's not him. They're like, yeah, that's him. So that's another part of me, I guess, I never even thought about bringing up. So musically inclined, artistically inclined, and like to go to the gym. I don't know what else I'm going to stick in there before I die, but bios3training@gmail.com. Leave comments down below. www.bios3training.com is the blog. I'm Bios3 and approve this message and wear drummer bicep. out.